Learn to be super successful. Subscribe to my channel, Meathead. I said last night, I can't remember if it was before or after dinner, that if you came out and you left here vis-a-vis running toward the gunfire vis-a-vis QLA, first and second step, like the guys came out boxing, they came out hell-bent for leather. That's not how you're supposed to box, but anyway, they came out hell-bent for leather. You'd all succeed. I went back and reviewed some of the files for these kids, or more recent kids, and every one of them came out hell-bent for leather. That's why a lot of them got sick, went to the hospital, blah, blah, blah. One was pronounced dead. I'm not suggesting you do that, but they came out hell-bent for leather. Like they had no backup plan. This was the last town, the last saloon, the last drink, and you stepped out in the street and it was the last fight. It was do or die. Not dissimilar to the boxing. I'm not going to ask you why you don't do that when you leave, but I'm going to tell you why you don't do that. Because default's a bitch. And part of that default's your family, blah, 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 blah. Your kids, your significant others, the job you think you're worried about losing if you don't, you know. We're going to talk about before you leave. Those that work, can you do this while you work? Those that are in school, can you do this while you're in school? Can you do this while you're in medical school? Can you do this while you're in the fucking convent? The answer is yes, yes, and yes. Will you do it? That's another question. Hell-bent for leather, but you're not trained to go all out, all in. Notwithstanding my lack of athletic prowess across the board, I went to school with guys that play professional football, professional baseball, etc. And in the playoffs for American football, they play at a higher intensity, especially when they get down to the final of the Super Bowl. It seems it's not that they can score at will, but they can almost score at will. They've got the 2-minute pattern, the 4-minute pattern, blah, blah, blah. And they just, throw long balls, Hail Marys, and they make touchdowns left, right, and center in American football. Because there is no other game. That's fucking it. And they're not worried about getting injured, because that's it. You don't do that. If you got injured, who gives a fuck? I mean, today, what you do. Now, we've had professional athletes here, and it's a different story. But there's nothing, well, I won't say there's nothing professional about anybody in the room, but there's nothing professional about anybody in the room. You don't go all out. All the sporting events, when it's the finals of the 100-meter at the Olympics, that's it. There ain't no more. And virtually, I won't say nobody, but almost nobody that has ever come to the seminar, save a few professional athletes, have ever gone all out. It's not in your makeup. They don't teach you. And of course, now they have participation ribbons and shit like that in sports. So, but that aside, the guys and the gals that go out like it's the last 2 minutes of their last Super Bowl win. And I hate to keep saying you're not going to do that. Please believe me, this is not a reverse psychology horseshit thing. I'm not saying this because you're not. It saddens me that you're not, but you're not. Because something will come up. Not my favorite excuse, not my favorite story. We had a guy a number of years ago. His 9-year-old daughter got knocked up. 9. You heard that correctly. 9. And that was it. And he never recovered. But QLA went down the toilet. Now, it's a whole other story. How in the fuck does a 9-year-old that you let go with a 15, 16-year-old chaperone to Italy? That's a whole other story, which I could write a book about. But anyway, he was through. And in fact, he was through, his life was through. Because the guilt of this, that, and everything. But I have a million stories. There used to be a TV program about New York City, 8 million people in Manhattan and 8 million stories. Well, I don't have 8 million stories, but I got a whole bunch of stories. That's, in my judgment, that's the worst one. Why you didn't. Or as they say here in Scotland, you didn't. But I got a lot of them, boy, fuck. And they all make sense to you when you say them. None of them make sense to me. And your mom will say fine. Your significant other will say fine. You heard yesterday one of the stars, he sent his brother here. And his brother was going to do it, and then he decided not to. And he said, here on the stage, and it pissed me off, that he, folded up and decided not to do it. You remember who it was? Well, you'll find a brother. God willing, you're not going to find a 9-year-old daughter who gets knocked up, and you'll figure out a way why it's okay. One of you asked me yesterday, this is not a part-time endeavor. This is not a part-time gig. So if you have a job, that job doesn't become part-time because you owe it to your employer to put in the 40 hours or whatever the fuck you're doing, right? In Europe, you put 26 hours or 32 hours. And even though 40 hours to me is part-time, that gig has become part-time. This is a 60, 80-hour deal. And that's why you get ill, because your immune system's not used to working that many hours. And it's not, some of you will break down if you do it. I'd like to say when you do it because words matter, but I know you're not. But if you do it, it's your immune system's going to break down. But really where it breaks down is up here between your ears, because you can't take the pressure. And I'm going to give you a schedule later today. A deal in 60 days, which the flat-chested bitch did. If I had put 45 days, she would have done it 45. Used to be 90. It used to be 120. It used to be 180. But like the first guy that ran the 4-minute mile, then 2 guys the next week ran the 4-minute mile, But it's a full-time gig. When I was going to graduate school, when I came back from the military, I found, and I was waiting to go to law school. I had scholarships to go to law school, which I never used. I'm selling real estate. And I thought to myself, I had a full load in graduate school. I had a couple pre-law classes, and I thought, fuck, this is, a monkey can make money at real estate. I got involved in construction, and so I'm 24 years old. Jesus Christ, why doesn't everybody do real estate and construction? I.e., we have a few right here, right? TK, Ravi, Marcus. I mean, a fucking moron can make money. Well, I was right in 1971. It hasn't changed 50 plus years later. And I had a sales manager named Kelly Norwood from Tennessee, a disbarred lawyer. He was about 60, 65. I thought he was Methuselah then. I mean, I was 24, he was 60, 65. But I mean, the words that came out of his mouth were like, pearls. And he said, a young boy like you, Pina, should sell every motherfucker that walks through the door. He was a racist old bastard. He looked like a Kentucky Fried Chicken guy, Colonel Sanders. He had that mustache. And during the summer, he used to wear white linen suits, 3-piece white linen suits. He says, a young boy like you ought to sell every fucker that walks through the door. So he said, and that meant 100%. I was taking a stat class at the time. I still remember that. And I think that means 100%, doesn't it? I asked the professor. He said, yeah. And I sold 94.6. And he says, you got to look at the parts before you are the part. You got, the kids today say, fake it till you make it. And I've kind of massaged that to perception is reality. You only have 2 times to make a first impression. First is how you look. Okay. And so I bought this, my first car, Rolls, 1971. So I'm going to grad school classes, and where I went to school, where you got to explain about it, the fucking girls were too stupid to understand what it was. So it wasn't as good a chick magnet as if I had some other kind of car, like a Mustang or something like that. But for selling real estate, I mean, it just gave me the money. I still remember the payments were $375 a month. That's big fucking money in 1971. Big money. Put $3,000 down on that. I didn't have $3,000. That was even large for money. But then I made enough money to pay the payments and live large. This is before they said about living large, you know. I was living way beyond my means. And I've always been attracted to the opposite. We've already discussed that. You know, what's hardest, the biggest guy. And my girlfriend and I at the time used to go drive to Beverly Hills and look at $1 and $2 million houses at that time. It's 50 fucking years ago. Now the houses are 50 million, 60 million, 80 million. We used to go to LAX and sit in, and there wasn't any security then. We sit in the first class lounge of Pan Am and watch the Pan Am flights land from Rome, Paris, London, and then they walk off. And in those days, they had the steps. You walk off, and everybody in the front of the plane was in first class. They were wearing suits and hats, and women were in fur coats. And my girlfriend and I used to watch that. I didn't know it was smelling leather. I didn't know that was it was. But I just come back from the military where I was a young officer, and I saw life from a different viewpoint, being with NATO, I saw ambassadors and stuff like that, and I met President Nixon. I was part of his security detail in 1968, and I've never been able to understand why people find a reason not to succeed. I still don't, to this day. And even though when I get an email from one of my billionaire mentees, and you need money, Dan, and why are you still doing this shit? Which I told you about yesterday. One, I'm stubborn. 2, I went to a school you got to explain about, not Columbia, not like you. But you'll find a reason. Just as the one person that's already left found a reason. But the reasons are going to be part of your extended 5 people that you spend the most time with. And invariably, it's always your family. I normally make this speech at the end, but I was thinking about it this morning. They don't go out of your way to fuck your life up. They don't. But see, they're more selfish than you are. They wanted you to do it their way. You heard Peter Rasty yesterday say, from years ago, when he was working on his QLA program, and he came out smoking. Okay? He dropped everything. He burned the ships. He had no way back. His little €30,000 a year job, he gave it to his partner. He had nothing. His mom is an engineer. No, his dad's an engineer, and his mom is a school teacher. And she wanted to go to the lake during the summer, as he alluded to. I'm not going to the lake. The first wedding that comes up for you. The first funeral that comes up for you. The first graduation that comes up for you, that you're supposed to go to, will be your first test. And I already know how it's going to go. Because the wedding will be your brother. Life's a bitch. Default's a bitch. bitch. And I can almost understand why you think you got to go to your. I'm not telling you not to go to your brother's wedding. Just think. How do you say no? Do you say no? What do you say? It's only one day. Normally, if it's your brother's wedding, it's a 3 or 4 or 5 day drunk. Unless times have changed dramatically. I never went to. No, I did go to my brother's wedding. I flew in a helicopter. He got married in Industry Park Country Club in Los Angeles, and I took a couple planes. I had to take a helicopter from Phoenix and landed there. Got there just as he was saying "I do." But what did he say, guys? Your anniversary. Part of the system is the doofus test. When the first meeting you have, I used to have people meet me, so they had to drive traffic 2 ways. So they had to come against traffic and leave against traffic. And in Manhattan, if I'm in Manhattan on Wall Street and they're in Connecticut, I mean, it's 3 hours there and 4 hours back. A lot of people didn't show up. A lot of people didn't show up and didn't even call. Now they, text you, right?